Navy patrol planes. Routine patrol. Only behind every cloud may be an enemy. Midway Island. Not much land, right enough, but it's our outpost, your front yard. These are the natives of Midway. Tojo has sworn to liberate them. The birds seem nervous. There's something in the air. Something behind that sunset. Excitement this morning. The Dawn Patrol has sighted an enemy fleet. During the night, flying fortresses had landed at Midway.
An historic council of war is held.
That fellow's walk looks familiar. My neighbor's boy used to amble along just like that. Say, is that one of them flying fortresses?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Why, that's young Will Kinney. He's from my hometown, Springfield, Ohio. He's not going to fly that great big bomber.
Yes, ma'am, that's his job. He's a skipper.
Will's dad is an engineer. 38 years on the old Ironton Railroad. And his mother, huh? Well, she's just like the rest of us mothers in Springfield or any other American town. And his sister, Patricia, well, she's about as pretty as they come.
I'll say so.
Well, Junior Kinney. Good luck. God bless you, son.
Suddenly, from behind the clouds, The Japs attack! There go the Marines!
Yes, this really happened.
Meantime, our warships stalk the Jap fleet. Suddenly, the trap is sprung. Navy planes roared from the decks of our carriers, army bombers, Marines, thundered destruction over a 300-mile battle area. forces were hit and hit and hit again.
Men and women of America, here come your neighbor's sons, home from the day's work. You want to meet them. There's Jimmy's patch, 7 meatballs on his plane.
How many more today, Skipper?
Back at Midway, Tojo swore he'd liberate the natives.
They seem just as free as they ever were.
The Battle of Midway is over. Our front yard is safe, but a big job is still to be done. Day after day, our patrol planes search for survivors. Every tiny coral reef, every distant mile of sea. Search for men who fought to the last round of ammunition and flew to the last drop of gas and then crashed into the sea. 8 days, 9 days, 10 days without food or water.
His first cigarette.
Boy, that first drag sure tastes good.
$11 days. Well done, Matthew Hughes. Logan Ramsey. Frank Fessler.
That's 13 for Frank.
To the hospital. Please do, quickly. Get them to clean cots and cool sheets. Get them doctors and medicine, the nurses' soft hands. Get them to the hospital. Hurry, please.
There was a hospital, clean, orderly, 100 beds, and on its roof the Red Cross plainly marked, the symbol of mercy the enemy was bound to respect.
The next morning, divine services were held beside a bomb crater that had once been a chapel. At eventide, we buried our heroic dead, the last salute from their comrades and their officers.
Captain Simard of the Navy. Colonel Shannon.
Major Roosevelt.
situated in the North Pacific Ocean, forming a chain which extends about 1,200 miles west-southwest from Alaska Peninsula toward Siberia to form the southern boundary of the Bering Sea. The Aleutians comprise 4 groups, the Fox, Andreanoff, Rat, and Near Islands, and constitute part of the territory of Alaska, USA. Of volcanic origin, there are numerous cones on the chain, many of them still active. The coasts are rocky and surf-worn, rising immediately from the water in steep, bold mountains. The Aleutians are the storm pot of the Western world. A permanent low-pressure area prevails there. Cold air masses from the polar regions flow with a shearing effect against the warm, moisture-laden air masses to form cyclonic disturbances. Because of the Earth's rotation, these disturbances move from west to east, and this meteorological phenomenon constitutes one of the most dangerous weapons in the arsenal of our enemies, for it enables the Japanese to operate behind the moving curtain of a storm. In the early days of June 1942, they employed this advantage in an all-out attempt to secure the entire Pacific Ocean. Behind eastward moving storms, they dispatched 2 invasion fleets against 2 widely separated objectives, Midway Island and Dutch Harbor, an operation designed to break the American line of sea defense upon which the security of the Pacific coast depends. Both attempts failed. American air forces engaged the enemy task force at Midway, achieving an historic victory. And at Dutch Harbor, American land-based planes from secret American airfields swarmed down, seemingly out of nowhere, to knock out 1, 2 troop-filled transports, 3 heavy cruisers, 2 destroyers, and 1 aircraft carrier. In pursuit of the enemy, our Army and Navy airmen flew through storm and fog and hurricane, 1/5 on instruments, 4/5 on luck. 20 hours for sometimes, through blind passes, by uncharted peaks, down through zero ceilings, not knowing whether the enemy fleet or a mountain lay below, sweating it out for hour after blind hour of continuous flight, and home without benefit of directional beam to land on unlighted runways, refueled, and take off into gray, blind hell. There is no monument to the many who went out and did not return. They fought and patrolled, in many instances, until their fuel was gone, knowing they would be forced down at sea, but unwilling to break off contacts they had made with enemy forces. Few are alive of those that flew against the Japs in the Battle of Dutch Harbor. If you wish to see their monument, you Americans here at home, look around you. In retiring, the remnants of the defeated Japanese task force landed troops on the undefended islands of Attu, Agatu, and Kiska. We immediately undertook the offensive. So commenced our march out along the bridge toward Asia. In late August of 1942, a large detachment of our troops landed on an island several hundred miles out along the chain, and under 2 hours by bomber from Kiska. The name of this island is Adak, and it is closer to Japan than any other American outpost. Typical of the Aleutian chain, it is windswept, treeless, rain-soaked, carpeted with sphagnum, a flat, spongy vegetation like undersea growth, which oozes water at every step. The only bird life on the island is its scavenger ravens, big, black, wind-ruffled. Remote as the moon and hardly more fertile, Adak is next to worthless in terms of human existence. Its sole value is that of a pin on a staff officer's map, but that value is measureless. Strategically, Adak is one of the most important locations in the world. 11 days after the occupation, an airfield was completed, and the first U.S. bomber sat down. 3 days later, flights took off on a bombing mission to Kiska, with complete fighter protection. Since that time, missions over Kiska have become a daily affair. The airfield is the heart of the island, beating with 500,000 horsepower of heavy and medium bombers, Navy amphibians, pursuit ships, transports. The sound of the engines warming up starts before dawn, echoing back from the mountains that flank the field. Every day, weather permitting, the bombers take off on at least one mission. Often on good days, a first flight takes off in the sunrise, others following at regular intervals, so that Kiska's under bombardment every hour until nightfall. Equal in importance to the airfield, and without which the airfield could not exist, is Adak's excellent harbor. Landlocked on three sides with a natural island breakwater, it enables heavy draft vessels to come inshore and unload by lighter under almost any weather conditions. If the airfield is the heart of Adak, the harbor is its hungry mouth. Its demands are ever on the increase. By day and by night, freighters, tankers, transports deposit munitions, supplies, men upon the beach. Standing guard over all the defense installations, coastal batteries, anti-aircraft emplacements, machine gun posts. There is nothing vulnerable about Adak any longer. Skies are constantly circled by aerial patrols and never-ending relays. PT boats, those seagoing in-fighters, stand by in readiness for a surprise landing attempt. Offshore, destroyers keep endless vigil, slipping like ghosts through the fogs, challenging each hull-down speck of an approaching vessel on the horizon. Listening with their undersea ears for the beat of an engine, scanning the seas with a plume of a periscope, standing rugged duty in the Bering Patrol, or slipping into port on the flank of a convoy. Although the sea lanes to Adak are constantly traveled by convoys, and contact with enemy submarines is a daily occurrence, sinkings in these waters have been few and far between. Contact with an enemy submarine may continue on and off for hours, during which the undersea craft maneuvers for position to attack, venturing within the radius of the convoy's undersea detectors, only to crash dive, then kill engines and lie silent on the bottom as our destroyers bear down and release depth charges. Our destroyers and Navy reconnaissance have held the undersea enemy well in check. The flow of men, munitions, and supplies flows ceaselessly on. The gigantic task of furnishing every American expeditionary force with the materials needed in carrying the fight to the enemy falls to the Army Service Forces. ASF is the bloodstream of our whole military body, maintaining its every organ and muscle. Adak presents a special problem, as the barren island furnishes nothing toward human needs save drinking water. Everything else must be brought here. Food, fuel for men and motors, machinery, munitions, shelter material. Raise these basic requirements to the nth power. Add parts and replacements for everything from Caterpillar tractors to can openers, plus the operations of estimating, purchasing, assembling, transporting, delivering, and it becomes apparent why the job of supplying a military force is now dignified by a $12 word like logistics. Since the original landing, the manpower of Adak has been constantly augmented. Where before it was hundreds, now it is thousands. Troops arrive after a voyage that may take anywhere from a week to a month, depending on the sea route. But it took more than a single month to land them here. The months of training that toughened them to rigors of wind and weather, that taught them to handle their weapons, that made them into soldiers. Add those months to the period of the voyage from the States. On ADAC, down-eastern accents mix with Texas drawls and Middle Western twangs and Brooklynese. Bookkeepers, grocery clerks, college men, and dirt farmers. That is, of course, ex-dirt farmers, ex-bookkeepers, ex-college men. Soldiers now, as though all their lives they'd been nothing but. Orders for the day, special orders and news appear on the bulletin board. Since newspapers and magazines are usually from a month to 3 months out of date, these radioed news flashes are the only means by which the soldier knows what's going on outside. No fresh meat, no green vegetables, powdered eggs, tinned bully beef, potatoes, canned tomatoes, peanut butter, canned fruit, and coffee make up the basic diet. And biscuits, barrels full of biscuits. Appetites are huge. Officers and men attend the same mess. As often as not, an officer doesn't display the insignia of his rank. The salute is reserved for rare occasions, but discipline does not suffer. Customary military formality is relaxed, plain civil necessity taking its place. After months in an outpost like ADAC, there's a tendency on the part of the soldier to think and live only in terms of the present. That faraway world from which he came begins to seem like a dream to him. A letter in his hand is proof of the reality of that world, of Saturday night dances, jalapenos and ice cream sodas, of sport pages and shaving in the same mirror with the old man. A letter means more than his paycheck to the soldier. If he happens to be in the Air Corps, he'd gladly make an extra flight over Kiska for one more letter. No moving pictures, no stage door canteens or USO, no girls, pretty or otherwise. Nothing to drink, not even a Coke. Candy bars, cigarettes, and chewing gum are rationed, but you never hear any belly aching. The extraordinary fact is that morale actually gets stronger the closer troops come to the enemy. On ADAC proper, morale is first rate. The site of the airfield was originally a shallow tidal lagoon. Army engineers diked up its inlet and drained off its waters by means of a channel to the sea. It was their resourcefulness in exploiting a natural formation which made possible the completion of the field in 10 days and 11 nights, for the work never ceased. Bulldozers shifted thousands of tons of the lava ash which composed the bed of the lagoon. Not a new gain to the Corps that built the Panama Canal. As the waters receded, grading crews followed, leveling and impacting the area in preparation for the final surface. This surface was not to be the usual concrete runway of an airport, but a steel one, whose sections had been prefabricated in American mills. It was put down by the infantry, of course, in 36 hours. 2.5 square feet of it. From then on, only the severest weather kept our planes grounded. Local storms materialize, deluge the island, and pass on or dissipate, all within a few short minutes. It's a land of cloudbursts and rainbows. If you don't like the weather, wait a minute, the soldier says. Everything the weatherman has to offer may be had in a single day. Downpours, hurricane winds, hail, snow, fog, sleet, and sunshine. It is not so much bad weather as changing weather that makes flying hazardous to the uninitiated there. A new pilot must learn to side-slip through local squalls and sit her down in a field rimmed by mountains and under a half-foot of water. The greater percentage of casualties, however, occur in the anti-aircraft fire over Kiska. As a rule, our bombers make it back, but often they are sorely crippled and with wounded or dead aboard.
In my father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself. And where I am, there ye may be also. And whither I go ye know, and the way ye know.
The day's mission is the highlight of each 24 hours. Eyes turn skyward and ears strain for the faint beat of approaching engines. At the first sound, an alert is flashed to the ground defenses. Units clear for action. Anti-aircraft and machine guns are stripped, ammunition broken out, and everything is put in readiness for an enemy who may be tailing our flights home. Bombers went out, and 6 are coming back. First ship lands. The remainder circle the field, another coming to Earth each time around. Those damaged or with wounded aboard taking priority. It's a revelation how much punishment one of these big bombers can take and still navigate. Unless both sets of controls are shot away or an explosive shell finds the gas tank, the odds are all in her making it safely home. Anyone who's been over will tell you that the most wonderful ride in the world is the ride back from Kiska. No matter if two engines have conked out and daylight is pouring through the wings, there's just something about the scenery on the way home. Crews proceed to the field operations tent of the Bomber Command, where they will be questioned as to results and observations. Their jigsaw reports, taken singly, are compared and cross-checked until a complete and accurate record of the operation has been assembled. Thereafter, they're dismissed, with nothing to do till tomorrow but eat, drink, and be merry.
I've got sixpence, jolly, jolly sixpence. I've got sixpence to last me all my life. I've got tuppence to spend, and tuppence to lend, and tuppence to send home to my wife. No cares have I to grieve me, no pretty little girls to deceive me. I'm as happy as a king, believe me, as we go rolling home. Rolling home, rolling home, rolling home, rolling home, by the light of the silvery moon. Happy is the day when the airman gets his pay, as we go rolling home.
But ADAC's tomorrow begins today with a directive from Kodiak Island, Intelligence Center. A photographic ship accompanies missions to Kiska. It's tasked to follow the bombers over their target, recording the immediate results of the bombardment, also enemy defense activities, new installations, camouflage. These photographs are studied by specialist interpreters and submitted with comments to the General and his staff officers, Colonel William Prince and Colonel C.M. McCorkle. Here is Kiska, her camp area, with its steel huts, her hangars, her underground railway, her gun installations. Kiska, one of the hottest spots on the earth, or above.
The main objectives in any mission from ADAC are the destruction of enemy shipping en route to Kiska, destruction of installations on the island, harassing of enemy personnel.
When the broader aspects of the operation have been decided upon, the senior officers of the bomber and fighter units work out its details. Among considerations in planning a mission are the type of aircraft to be employed, the weight and type of bombs, the time, altitude, and direction of the attack. All of these are interrelated, a change of one influencing all the others. The overall determining factor is weather. For this reason, the Navy meteorologist plots his charts up to the very time of takeoff. A change of weather at the last moment may mean a complete revision of tomorrow's plans. Tomorrow is Sunday. At their outposts on the island, Catholic, Protestant, and Jewish chaplains, not priests, ministers, or rabbis, but chaplains, all, are leading fighting men in their devotions. Under the snows of an Aleutian mountain, these defenders of the faith exercise the first of their four freedoms. But so far as the business of war is concerned, Sunday on ADAC is like any other day. There's a mission going out at 13 o'clock. Bombs must be brought down to the field from their camouflage dumps. A heavy bomber carries either 16 250-pounders, 12 500-pounders, or 8 1,000-pounders. The size of the bomb to be employed depends upon the nature of the target. Since if the target is small, there's a better chance of hitting it with a salvo of 250-pounders than with a single large bomb. On the other hand, in congested areas, such as the campsite at Kiska, a blockbuster comes into its own. Tail fins and fuses are put on directly before the assembled bomb is hoisted into the bomb bay. When the time comes, bombs can be released either individually, in sticks, or in salvos. Belts of ammunition are brought to machine guns and threaded into receivers ready for firing. The rounds are put onto the belts in successions of threes, red-tip tracers, yellow incendiaries, and black regulations. Each moving part of each gun has been tended with watchmaker's care, and every belt of ammunition is cleaned, oiled, and checked before the takeoff. It is 12:40 o'clock, and the pilots who are going to fly the mission receive final instructions.
3 flights, 2 of B-24s and 1 of B-17s are to go over the target. The first flight at 1,100 feet to drop 500-pounders on anti-aircraft installations at North Head. Then to proceed along the coastline, strafing to the western limits of the camp area. The second flight at 7,500 feet to drop 1,000-pound bombs on the camp area. The third flight at 4,500 feet to destroy hangars with 500-pound bombs. Second and third flights to follow at intervals of 45 seconds. 3 fighters to precede each bomber flight at 600 feet, and 3 fighters to afford overhead protection from enemy aircraft.
Crews begin to assemble around the ships, awaiting the appearance of their officers. A bomber crew is a team, and the longer it's together, the better the teamwork. Theirs is a mutual responsibility. The safety of the ship and the lives of all the others may depend on any single member. Trust, respect are implicit in such a relationship if it is to endure. Maybe in the beginning you don't like the color of a guy's hair, but if he's all there at his job, you'll get to like it fine. Enlisted men eat, sleep, fly together. Their voices on the intercom become familiar, easy to understand, and understanding is vital. Every gunner knows the quality of every other's marksmanship and courage. The navigator can plot a 1,000-mile course over open sea and make a landfall. 8 men can testify. Trust and respect for the bombardier, the radio operator, the engineer, co-pilot, and trust and respect for the ship they fly. A monument ought to be put up to that pre-war fraternity of high school speed maniacs, for out of their ranks, our fighter pilots are largely drawn. They bring to their hazardous undertakings split-second judgment, inspiration, daring. Lieutenant George I. Riddell, 12 strafing missions over Kiska. Lieutenant Hawley P. Mills, 14 missions. Lieutenant Lyle A. Bean, 13 missions. Major Milton Ashkins, 15 missions. Lieutenant Henry J. Strankowski, 11 missions. Colonel Jack Chenault, son of General Chenault of the Flying Tigers. Colonel Jack has a 0 and a submarine to his credit. A last-minute weather observation is made. The word is given to go. It's good luck and over the hill. The aerial camera goes aboard. The bomber pilot informs his crew of the exact part their ship is to play in the mission. Your bomber pilot is of a different breed to your fighter. Where the fighter is reckless and inspired, the bomber pilot is responsible, determined. Because of the size and imponderability of his ship, there are no last-moment decisions for him. And besides the big, intricate, costly piece of machinery that a heavy bomber is, he has the lives of 6 or 8 others to think about. 100 men, 9 bombers, 12 fighters, are setting out to attack and immobilize 10,000 men behind naval and military defenses. This is the significance of aerial supremacy. But behind this supremacy lies the enormous system which makes it possible for the ships to take off. ASF, Naval Convoy, Army Air Transport, the Corps of Engineers, Army and Navy Intelligence, Signal Corps, Ordnance, and Ground Forces. These have done their part for today. The stage is set. Rehearsals are over. The actors are ready. The curtain is going up. But this is no make-believe drama. They will be playing for keeps. William O. Erickson, who sat the first bomber down on Adak and led the original mission over Kiska. thunder of engines makes the earth tremble and the ravens rise. The echelon proceeds toward Kiska. It's about an hour and 3/4 from Adak to Kiska. One of the most hotly defended of enemy-held areas, Kiska is also one of the most strongly fortified. The Japs have dug in like so many moles. An estimated force of 10,000 goes underground, at the sound of our approaching engines. We cannot, by air attack, hope to annihilate. We can only harass the force on Kiska, cripple the island's defenses, keep the enemy from adding to its resources, while we build our own fighting strength to the day and the hour when we shall undertake a landing operation. Radio contact is maintained between the bombers and ADAC throughout the flight, which proceeds at military speed, 165 miles per hour. During the first part of the journey, the waist guns are swung into position, turret mechanisms tested, and trial rounds fired. Time moves slowly going out to the target. Crew members have even been known to play stud poker. The route is quite familiar by now. Many pilots and crews have made the flight 25, 30 times. Along about the time Amchitka is sighted, they begin to look out for enemy planes. The men whose regular job it is say no matter how often a fellow's gone over, he always feels funny up there over Kiska. At a signal from the squadron leader, the pilots will open throttle, and the planes will go into the bombing run. For a minute and a half to 2 minutes, they will proceed at level flight in an absolutely straight line toward the target, thereby enabling the bombardier to make his computations: wind velocity, speed, temperature, altitude, drift. There can be no deviation whatever in the flights if the bombs are to find the target.
10 miles and 3 minutes from the objective.
Before Kiska Volcano, the mission deploys, each flight going to its designated altitude in preparation for the run. The enemy will endeavor to throw the flights off their runs, and to this he will bring all his firepower to bear. The earth below will blaze with hatred. Our ships will heave and rock in the ack-ack. Machine gun bullets may make a filigree of their wings. High explosives may open up holes big enough for a man to crawl through. Little Kiska, outer defense of Kiska Harbor.
Bomb bay doors open. Bomb bay doors open. 6 degrees right on course.
The object is to hit the target, not to avoid anti-aircraft. Remember this, you're just as liable to run into it as away from it. The best way is to forget what's happening outside and make the run by instruments. That way, if it comes, well, you just look over your shoulder and see a man with a long beard, and you say, "Good morning, Father Abraham."
I want every man to stick by his gun until I say he can leave. Use every round of ammunition on this ship. Fire straight at the gun flashes until they stop. If we're hit and have to bail out, there'll be plenty of Navy around to pick us up. Okay, shall we give it to them?
Kiska. Low altitude.
Once again, over lightly.
flight at 4,500 feet. Hangars are destroyed, burning. Our bombs found the target. 9 bombers came out, and 9 are going home.
Of the 2nd Marine Division. We're now embarking on a full-scale amphibious operation after many months of intensive training. The transports are combat loaded. The ships of the Navy and Coast Guard form our convoy. Squadrons of carrier planes cover us in the sky. Several days from our destination, a destroyer brings us sealed orders. Long now before we know where we're bound. The relief map of our objective is broken out. Fortified island of Betio in the Tarawa Atoll, a very important Jap air base on the outer fringe of their Pacific defenses. Our platoon leader started explaining the terrain to us. By the time they were finished, we knew that island and its reefs as well as we knew our own backyards. We built more machine gun ammunition. Check and test fire all weapons. Exercise helped to relieve the tension. Navy and Coast Guard coxswains received last-minute instructions on formations, rendezvous areas, and departure times. Services are held on the last evening before D-Day. We liked listening to Father Kelly. He'd been with us at Guadalcanal. He had a way of saying what we wanted to hear. Many of these men were killed the following morning. We are ready. D-Day. This is the day we attacked. Long before daylight, we're over the side into amphibian tractors and landing boats. At daylight, our naval vessels opened fire, and for 4 solid hours they pounded Tarawa with high explosives. Everything went like clockwork. When the ship stopped firing, the Navy planes would take over. Bombing. Strafing. We were a team, working together. Then, again according to plan, the planes withdraw and the ship's batteries open up again. Each hour, the hour we attack, is getting close. For 3 days before we moved in, over 4 million pounds of explosives had been dropped on the island. It didn't seem possible that anyone could live through that bombardment. From this Jap hulk, machine guns constantly strafed our assault waves. We bombed them out twice, but each time a new crew took over. One of our planes scores a direct hit. As we approach the island, we have the feeling that the show is just about over. There doesn't seem to be any organized resistance. However, we're taking no chances. Suddenly, we're met by heavy machine gun and mortar fire. It takes a heavy toll of our boats and men. It doesn't stop us. We fight our way onto the beach. Our men wade ashore from wrecked amphibians. A long pier extending across the fringing reef gives protection to a lot of our boys on the way in. We have a pretty good toehold on the beach, but Jap fire pins us down for hours. Casualties are pretty high, but as we found out later, blood plasma saves a lot of lives. When reinforcements arrive, we start moving up. It isn't easy knocking those Japs out of their positions. They're hidden in trees, behind revetments, buried pillboxes, bomb-proofs, bunkers. firepower we have to blast them out. Our rifle fire is deadly. So are the flamethrowers and the mortars. The enemy breaks from cover. It's tough getting them out of places like this. We can never be sure where their snipers are placed. We take it slow, easy. This bunker is giving us plenty of trouble. We have orders to clean it out. On the other side. They're savage fighters. Their lives mean nothing to them. One of our boys is hit. At night, the Japs would swim out to our wrecked amphibians and set up machine guns. They got a few of us before we got them. Commanding officer of the assault troops confers with his staff. One of our medium tanks remains in operation. Although at the end of the second day, D+1, we breathe a little easier, mortar squads continue to hammer enemy points of resistance. By this time, we know the Japs are licked. They must know it, too. There's still strong resistance. Nip suicide snipers tie themselves up in the trees and take pot shots at us. We hit them, but they don't fall. Just die and hang there. Of a Jap Red Cross truck they'd loaded with ammunition. A light tank moves up the airstrip. One of our boys is wounded during the attack on the airfield. Another Marine goes out after him in a jeep under heavy machine gun fire. Back at the beach, there's constant activity. Amphibians tow in fresh supplies, food, ammunition, and guns. As the battle moves across the island, the chaplain's assistants tend the dead, removing the lower identification tag and leaving the duplicate on each Marine so there'll be no mistake later on. Generals Holland Smith and Julian Smith commanding the force and division. Admiral Harry Hill commanding the task force. Sometimes we actually have to dig the Japs out of their holes. The island is infested with buried pillboxes, many of them still crawling with Japs. These bunkers were so constructed that heavy shelling and demolition charges failed to crumble them. Many of them were over 20 feet deep. Our first prisoners. The wounded are given first aid in the field and then carried by stretcher to the boats. With them always are the Navy hospital corpsmen and Navy doctors and surgeons. At the transport, the steel litters are lifted from the barges and lowered into the hold. They're taken to the ship's hospital. Not a second is lost. These are Marine dead. This is the price we have to pay for a war we didn't want. And before it's over, there'll be more dead aerial aboard ship for Marines killed in action. Just to make sure they're not concealing weapons, the prisoners are lined up and their clothes cut away. We gave them new ones later from their own dumps. The rest of the island's defending force is dead. None escaped. Tokyo once boasted that it would cost 100,000 of our men to take Tarawa. We lost less than 1,000. The Japs over 4,000. A wounded Jap soldier. We took very few of these. Most of our prisoners were Korean laborers. One of our officers captured these Japs from a disabled landing boat. Prisoners carry their own wounded to the pier for evacuation. Captured Jap water. This is the first chance the boys have had to wash since they got on the island. Gunfire from our warships knocked these big guns out early in the bombardment. These were English Vickers guns captured by the Japs in Singapore. One of their many light tanks. This was the Jap command post, built of reinforced concrete several feet thick. That building was built to withstand plenty, and did. We finally took it with TNT and flamethrowers. The fighting was still going on at one end of the island when the Seabees landed with their heavy equipment. They set to work clearing the airstrip even while we were fighting for it. The first plane landed just 24 hours after the Seabees had started to work. The second one lands 1 minute later. We welcome the pilot to our new home. It was our first chance to thank those guys for the swell job they did for us before and during the attack. On D+4, our relief came in. Maybe you think we weren't glad to see them. I guess all of us knew from the first, no matter how tough the going was, that we'd take the island. Just the same, the day the colors were run up on this palm tree and flew for the first time over Tarawa, we got a lump in our throats. We were mighty proud. These are the Marines who took Tarawa.
My name is Max Drune. I was born and raised in Old Mexico, foreign born by American parents. I lived in Carmel since 35 until 39 when Germany attacked England. During this time I got to thinking, well, it's about time for Uncle Sam looking for us. And I was at the right age at that time, so I picked the Navy and joined the Navy. Well, this looks like we had hit an ammunition dump there. That's the way those mushrooms like that. So we were there for, well, every island we went to, we were there until it was secured, actually, before we could move out of there. So if it take a week, 2 weeks, or whatever it was, why we were there to support the Marines. That's what they used the big battleships for. Is heavy artillery. We'd also illuminate at night for them with star shells. That was our job, the 5-inch guns that I was on. We did a lot of star shell firing at night. Also, we shot Jap planes down at night too, but not with star shells, but we had our other projectiles that we'd use. That looks like one of the observation planes. We used to carry 3 of those observation planes. And that's what those atolls looked like. They just, good wave looked like it'd go clear over. We came out with a very secret, from what I understood, we called it the Buck Rogers projectile, that you could fire out there, and as long as it come into a certain distance from the plane, then make contact and explode and knock the plane down. That was towards the end that they used that. It was very interesting because we could, at night, they could track these planes out there and wait for them to get to a certain range as they were going back and forth, and then when they were ready, we'd just fire one round and all you see is a ball of fire. Off of Okinawa, I remember one night we shot 4 of them down with our batteries. The only part about the bombardment and the big guns, I had no problem with the 14-inch guns. It's the smaller caliber that has the sharper crack to them that was what really bothered your eardrums. But the big guns, when they would go off, they were just nothing but a big woof. And but the smaller ones were just a real sharp crack. At that time, all we had for protection of our ears was just cotton. When in the first round or so, you couldn't find the cotton, it just blew out, you know. So I went all through that Pacific except the China Sea, and that was the last engagement, you know, after we landed, invaded Okinawa and then Iwo Jima and Guam and all of that. Then the ship went back to Okinawa, and then the war was over with by then. And the ship went to Tokyo. I was kick myself this day. I missed the trip to Tokyo. This looks like landings and different landings, and there's looks like kind of a hospital ship or something there. What was always good out there during the war was to see our planes in the air. That made a person feel good to have your aircraft in there for protection. Back you up anyway. Now that's the way those atolls look, the way I have in these pictures here after they were bombarded and well, we call it, this is the way we landscaped it. Well, they used to have an ammunition ship come alongside of us. Same way with the fuel. Big oil tanker would come alongside and they'd hook up their hoses. And also, we could take oil on at sea. They had rigs that they could take the hoses and bring them right on over and hook them up. And as we cruised along, we could fill our tanks. And actually, the battleships used to fill the destroyers up this way too. In other words, when they were low on fuel, the battleships used to give the destroyers fuel that way. And supplies, a big supply ship would come alongside. Or if we were in port, they'd come into port when then they have truck it in, with right on the docks there. Or if we were anchored out in the bay or someplace, they'd put it in boats and take it out, and then with our hoists and everything, pull it aboard. Cranes. We had cranes on the ship that would do that too. Ammo would always go down into the magazines. Now in these big turrets, they'd have their ammunition and their magazines right below the turret. That's why I say that dud that broke on the, that hit our number 3, if it had gone on down, it would have hit the, I wouldn't be here talking to you about it. But, and coming into port, we always stored our ammunition. Everything went back down to the magazine and locked up. But we were fortunate in Pearl that we were running a test on our ammo. You see, on our 5-inch 28s at those days, they used to have a nose cap on it just to protect the fuse cover. It covered the fuse at the end of the projectile. In other words, it's a time-setting fuse that you could have it go so high or so far, and then it would explode. That's a time-setting, what they call. And that would protect that. But to take those things off, you had to have a pair of pliers because they were soldered down there. It took time to pull those things off. So they come up with some kind of an idea that they'd take those nose caps off and dump them in paraffin, and we were saving them for about 30 days, and then we were going to go out and test them to see if they, if there was any kind of defect in it. Well, the morning of the 7th, we had 50 rounds on each side, so we opened up with those right away, and they worked very, very nicely, thank God. While other ships had to get the ammo from down below. But that's how we got started firing right away. You wouldn't dare to smoke a cigarette or anything like that. Everything was that it was. Naturally, anytime you handled any kind of the ammunition, you handled it with respect, with being darn careful and pay attention what you're doing, because you wouldn't get a second chance. One of those projectiles or powder would go off, But it got so that everybody was pretty well drilled and trained how to handle it. We were making a turn a little bit when some artillery over on Tinian fired and hit one of our turrets and killed all the fellows in the handling room of turret 7. That was a bad thing. And turret 7 was just diagonal across from. I was on turret 2 on the port side. This is on the starboard side diagonal. I darn near got that turret. They were going to assign me to it, and the fellow that was going to take my place, he had gone to school in electrical hydraulics in Washington, D.C. for a course for about 3 weeks on this new equipment we had when they installed it. And I didn't get to go, but they were going to send me over, and I was getting schooled by the fellow that went to Washington, D.C. And how this happened, I knew Tommy was, we almost went aboard ship at about the same time. And he had a brother that came aboard, and he was in the same division with him. And I talked to him. I says, hey, I didn't go to school, and McAdams is teaching me how to operate this, how to run this gun. And why don't we can swap. You'll be with your brother and this and that. And there wasn't no long. He says, that's fine. And the chief okayed it. So I stayed on gun 2, and he was killed on gun 7. I think about that quite a bit. That was so. Those are the things that really a nightmare. The one that was really scary was off of Okinawa. We fired so many rounds that the paint on the barrels of our guns almost, it was just plain steel. And we were continuing on firing. And then when you'd have a misfire is to remove that powder charge out of there and replace it before that projectile would go off. In other words, they call them cook-off. And off of Okinawa, I threw eight misfires over out of the gun. That's pretty hairy, I'm telling you. There was some darn little islands out of that place that you guy can hardly remember that thing. The Tennessee operated with the 2nd, 4th, and 5th Marine Division, all through the Pacific. And well, we got notes here where they would request the Tennessee to bombard for them. I watched them put the colors up on Mount Suribachi. Here these fellows would, as they were approaching the morning, they would go in. The Marines were going by here. We were laying off, waiting for them to move in, and these landing craft would come alongside of them. And first thing they'd say, hey, you guys got any hot coffee up there? So we'd go in the galley and get some coffee and send it down to them. And they had their coffee and all this and that. And then all of a sudden they moved in. And as they were getting near the beach there, why naturally we started to lay down the barrage there for them. And you see in my turret that I had, when we went back and they modernized the ship, they put in the different gun. We used to have single barrel, four on each side of this 5-inch 25. After we went into Birmingham and they modernized the ship, we came out with 8 twin mount guns on each side, 5-inch, and then that was a 38 caliber. Then there was it was what they called a semi-fix. You had the projectile and the powder separately. And they had a man that put in the powder charge and the other one put the projectile and rammed them together. But on a 38, it was all in one piece. And to crank that darn gun around, it was just manpower. But on these, they got the electrical hydraulic and it was motorized. You could swing those guns back and forth, which made it a lot easier and quicker. And we were laying in there and blasting in there, and on top of the turret we had a periscope that we could watch, you know, when you're firing. And I happened to was looking over on the island, and that morning when the Marines were crawling up there, because we were lobbing shells up ahead of them going in there. And pretty soon I saw the flag go up, and I said, "Oh boy, look at them, they've got the island." And that the first time I saw the flag, it came down. And then a little while later, it went up again. It stayed up. I felt great. I really felt great. I felt that we were helping those boys and they were doing their job, and we tried to give them all the support we could because they were in it up there. That's tough going for them. All right, that's one of the big batteries there. That's the main battery is on the battleships out here. This could be 14s or 14 inches. The 3-barrel are the 14 inches, and the 2 barrels are those large ships are the 16-inch batteries. Those are 14s there. 14-inch 50 caliber. They shoot a projectile. I think it's about 1,565 pounds with 400 pounds of propelling charge of powder behind them. You can see the big blast of smoke coming out, and that's hitting the beach. Where I couldn't tell you where that one was. That's the powder, burning powder, pushing the projectile out. Of course, those look more like Japanese landing crafts, aren't they? No, there's LSTs and LCIs there. Landing crafts. Well, I tell you, after 4 on and 4 off all day long and doing your job at any place you could lay down and sleep through it anyway, you could sleep through the guns going off on any time after a while. It just... We would always fire ahead of them, way ahead of them, you see. And we had target areas that we were supposed to shoot. And we knew when they got to that part, and with communications, they'd let you know where they were too. You know, sometimes they get wrong communications, and some of them would be shot, you know, lob the shells in your own boys, you know, which is, you want to be very careful. But the aircraft and the big ships did a lot to support those boys that were landing up there. And we lost a lot of men. I ran into a fellow that was on the Houston. The Houston was one of our first cruisers, I think, that was sunk off of the Philippines, you know. And he said that he was in the water for three days out in that shark-infested water. He lives in the valley. And they picked all this virus they picked up. They took them to Japan, and they put him in the workforce, and he worked in the mine all during the war. And the funny part about it, he told me that his wife and him bought a piece of property down on Mission Fields, and he had a Japanese gardener. And they were living down the coast, and they happened to be up doing some shopping up around Monterey. And on the way home, they stopped by to take a look at the house, you know, and see if things going on all right. And by golly, he ran into this Japanese gardener, and that Japanese gardener took a good look at him, and he looked at him, and the Japanese gardener picked his tools up and got in his truck and took off. And this fellow recognized him as being one of the guards when he was in prison out there. I couldn't believe that. He said, no, it's the truth. People say, I've told so many people this and that, this story that actually happened to me is, and you stop and think and you say, well, in such a condition, how can you be have such a thing that's so amusing and enduring these conditions? Well, you see, when I was doing my meth cooking, I got acquainted with a Filipino mess cook. He was a cook. He was mess cooking for the officers. They had the Filipino boy was the officers' mess cook. And one morning he said to me, "Say, John," he says, "when you get through doing your work and I get through," he says, "how would you like to have a good breakfast, like ham and eggs? I mean, this like the old American style." And I says, "Well, fine." He says, "Okay, I'm going to give you these 2 eggs, and you put them in your locker and hide them." Okay. Well, on December the 7th, December the 8th, we were going to have an admiral's inspection. That was all planned. They were going to have a big inspection, the whole, not knowing we were going to be at war. So to prepare myself for this inspection, I went and bought a new pair of shoes and pants and jumper, and, so I could pass inspection. Shined my shoes and had them all. So I had the shoes in my locker, and when he gave me these 2 eggs, I says, "Now where in the devil am I going to put these eggs?" I says, "Oh, well, I'll put them in my brand new shoes. I'll put a sock in each one of them, an egg in each sock, and store it in my shoe." And I says, "That will be safe there. And then we'll have breakfast. I'm going to get my eggs." So help me God, as honest as I'm sitting here, all during that firing and all during that battle and this and that, I was worried to death of those darn eggs breaking in that brand new pair of shoes. And honestly, my mind was on those eggs and loading that gun. I could have gotten shot and not even knowing that I got shot and killed, but just worrying about that. And a lot of people said, "Did you go down and check to see if those eggs didn't break?" And I says, "I certainly did." Well, they were okay, but it was terrible. No, the bodies from all over from Arizona, it was a mess. It was just awful. Backs, boys burning in the fire from the oil. It was sickening. But that little thing there just kept my mind on my business. I found out as long as you're occupied, you can do a lot of things without worrying about something. It's afterwards when you do that, after you see the thing. As long as your mind was occupied, the bullets could be whizzing all around you, and it wouldn't bother you a bit. But I just had to tell you that one. I always wanted to go back and see what one of those islands looked like, but I don't know. I think a lot of that equipment that they had on some of those islands that they'd picked up and left, they didn't have time to load it, to move on. The first ones that got there really got to pick up a lot of that good. When you had to move, you had to move. That was all there's to it. You didn't have time to pick up whatever's laying around. Yep. And I'm glad I went in when I did and got into the service that I wanted to get in. And I feel very proud that I was able to do my part in this for the United States.
as you know it. Wide stretches of water. But this is the Pacific as the Joint Chiefs of Staff view it. A battlefield, a vast fortress-studded plain on which key strongholds anchor a Japanese defense line guarding the heart of the homeland. The American front lines had advanced to Guam and Saipan. Ahead now stood Iwo Jima, the most heavily fortified island in the world. Buried deep underground lay 20 years of Jap preparation for murder. 20,000 of their toughest fighting men waited for us to make the first move.
And they don't have to wait long. The Navy begins to soften up the island so we can land. Carrier force take off to strafe and bomb. Move in close to work over enemy beach installations. Enemy fire gets closer. Toughest 26 days in Marine Corps history. We watch the central control vessel. When this flag drops, our landing craft will head for the beach. Landing craft in 10 waves advance on 3,000 yards of beach. Keeps us pinned down. We want to pull the beach over our heads like a blanket. Our tanks come ashore and grind inland. We're able to advance from Yellow Beach, but it's slow going. Trouble on Green Beach. From their fortified positions on Mount Suribachi, the Japs look right down our throats. Call the command ship standing offshore. Our message is received. The situation map is checked. The support air director contacts carrier planes circling the target. The flight leader receives his instructions. From the air, supporting ships deliver point-blank fire. After 72 hours of continuous pounding, our patrols moved forward. A mortar barrage searches out hidden machine gun nests. A sharp lookout for snipers. Admiral Turner gives the order to cease fire. Our guns are quiet as they make the climb. We wait for a sign. Suribachi is ours. Suribachi is ours, a toehold on the southern tip of the island. But ahead, the main strength of the Jap garrison was entrenched in steel and concrete. The show was just beginning. Navy and Coast Guardsmen rushed supplies ashore for the big push north. was tough going. Many didn't make it. Crossfire ahead is murderous. Rocket trucks go into action. Spot our position. We don't even have time to remove our dead. There are heavy defenses on the ridges overlooking this plain. They draw a bead on us again. Chased us off there 5 times. We came back 6. We brought in our wounded, and we took a breather. The injured are carried to the rear. Plasma's given on the way. Hospital dugouts are ready for anything. And we are ready to advance again. We call for artillery. Duel develops at night. One of our ammunition dumps goes up. In 2 weeks, we have cleaned out plenty of Japs between here and Suribachi. But there's still a lot of island to be taken, with thousands of Japs fighting from blockhouses, pillboxes, and caves. We have to go in and dig them out, one by one. fought, we prayed. Along the beach was only a small part of the cost of 26 days of fighting. Too. Names of our friends. We stacked the helmets of our dead in neat piles. Helmets of 4,000 men who died to take a tiny island somewhere in the Pacific.
You're right, Marine. You've taken a tiny island. But it's not just 8 square miles of rock. Today, it's an American fortress only 4 hours from Tokyo. Today, from your little island, giant striking forces are launched against the heart of Japan. Today, our planes and ships are blasting the enemy into ashes at the foot of Fujiyama.
With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God.
Iwo Jima was a 4-mile-long island of sulfuric volcanic rock squatting in the vastness of the North Pacific Ocean. The beauty of a dawning sunrise belied the ugly truth of what lay ahead. What made this place worth dying for? Iwo Jima was only 675 miles from Tokyo. That was close enough for fighter planes to give desperately needed protection to the giant B-29 bombers on their daily sorties over Japan. American forces had to have the island's 2 airfields, and on February 19, 1945, 60,000 Marines were sent ashore to get them. The Japanese had turned Iwo Jima into the most heavily fortified island in the world, a fact the Marines discovered as soon as they hit the beach.
The hail of fire was so heavy, it was incredible. I mean, bullets zipping by, the snap and pop as they break the sound barrier, the crunch of the artillery and so on. You're almost numb.
We know what happened on Iwo Jima, but we need to see it to best understand it. News photographers went ashore with the Marines and became our eyes, recording what happened on this dismal ground that grew so precious with the blood of the men who fought for it. Joe Rosenthal was among the best of the photographers.
The sounds, of course, and smells, and clouds of smoke, and shouts and screams, and calls for the corpsmen. You're intent on getting onto the island.
There were 5,000 fortified caves, bunkers, and pillboxes on Iwo Jima, 1,000 of them on Mount Suribachi. It was the 28th Marines' job to move up from the beach and capture this high ground.
Flamethrowers, shape charges, hand grenades, everything you could think of to seal. And the work was first to seal up the pillboxes and then seal up the caves.
On the 5th day of fighting, the Marines finally made it to the top, and the first American flag was planted on Suribachi. It was a small flag, perhaps 2 feet by 3, attached to a long water pipe.
They tied that to the pipe, rammed it into a crevice in the ground, and we piled rocks around it and stomped the rocks down and held it upright. And there was the flag, the first flag raising.
Later that morning, Joe Rosenthal reached the top of Suribachi and witnessed the raising of a second, larger flag, one big enough for all the Marines on the island to see with the naked eye. Rosenthal found himself in the right place at the right time and instantly took what is likely the most famous picture of World War II.
Now, I had time only for that one quick shot. I just hoped and prayed, that I got what I thought I saw in the finder.
What he got was a photograph that seemed to convey a message to the rest of the country. These are the men America sent to war, and this is the job they are being asked to do.
Every time I see the same picture, I look at it, I see D-Day with guys falling around with all the noise and the high-pierced calls for the corpsmen.
Marine Commander General Holland Smith once said that the battle for Iwo Jima was the costliest territory the United States Marine Corps ever had to win. The grim statistics bear him out. More than 6,800 Marines died on Iwo Jima. Another 18,000 were wounded. It took 36 days to secure Iwo Jima, and when it was done, Admiral Chester Nimitz spoke the words that still hang in the air today above this place of incredible courage and astonishing carnage. Nimitz said of Iwo Jima that it was a place where uncommon valor was a common virtue.
You think about those who didn't make it, who are still there, buried on the island, as a matter of fact. And I guess you also feel a little guilt because you made it and they didn't, and you wonder why you.
The picture that Joe Rosenthal took atop Mount Suribachi doesn't answer those kinds of questions. But with the click of his camera's shutter, in that heartbeat of a moment, he captured something that even 55 years after the war still lingers in this country's conscience, offering us, perhaps, some idea why it all had to happen. I'm George Watson for My 20th Century.